Have you ever felt watched? That prickle on the back of your neck, the sudden urge to look over your shoulder. Most dismiss it. A trick of the light, a rustle in the leaves. But in the heartland of America, where fields stretch to the horizon, some shadows hold more than just darkness. They hold fear, the fear of the smiling thing. The cornfields seem endless. Rows upon rows of towering stalks, green leaves whispering secrets in the wind, a place of life, of bounty, but also of hiding. The sun dips low, casting long, distorted shadows. What seems like a harmless scarecrow by day becomes a looming spectre by night. This is where it lurks, the smiling thing. It's not the scarecrows that haunt these fields, though their presence is unsettling enough. It's something else. Something that moves just beyond sight, a flash of white and that unnatural grin, a smile stretched too wide, frozen in a grotesque mockery of joy. Those who see it are never the same. The story started as whispers. Farmers would find their crops trampled, strange symbols carved into the earth. Children swore they saw something moving in the fields, a fleeting glimpse of white and that chilling smile. Most dismissed it as folklore, the ramblings of frightened children, but the fear was real. The smiling thing was real. Section 5, Lost and Found. Then came the disappearances. It started with whispers, rumours of people going missing near the cornfields. At first it was just a few isolated incidents, easily dismissed as accidents or people simply getting lost. But as the days turned into weeks, the number of missing persons grew, and the community could no longer ignore the chilling pattern. People vanishing without a trace, last seen near the edge of the cornfields. The fields, once a symbol of prosperity and hard work, had now become a place of dread. Families would find personal belongings, shoes, backpacks, even bicycles, abandoned at the edge of the fields, as if the earth had swallowed their loved ones whole. Search parties would comb through the endless rows, finding nothing but silence and the unsettling feeling of being watched. Volunteers, armed with flashlights and hope, would venture into the cornfields, calling out names, only to be met with the eerie rustling of cornstalks. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became, as if the fields themselves were alive and aware of their presence. Some were lucky, stumbling out of the fields days later, clothes torn, eyes wide with terror. These survivors were often disoriented, unable to recall how they had survived or what had happened to them. Their stories were fragmented, filled with gaps and inconsistencies, but one thing was clear. They had experienced something beyond comprehension. They spoke of being chased, of the smiling thing always just out of reach, its laughter echoing through the stalks. This entity, described as having a grotesque, ever-present grin, seemed to take pleasure in their fear. The survivors' accounts were chilling, painting a picture of a malevolent force that thrived on their terror, always lurking just beyond the edge of their vision, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. One man, John Miller, lived to tell his tale. His story is one of those that chills you to the bone, a tale that makes you question the safety of the night and the shadows that lurk within it. John was an ordinary man with an ordinary life, until that fateful night when everything changed. He had been driving home late one night when his car broke down near the edge of a cornfield. The night was pitch black, the kind of darkness that seems to swallow everything. The only light came from the dim glow of his car's interior and the faint glimmer of the moon hidden behind thick clouds. John tried to start the car again, but it was no use. The engine was dead, and he was stranded in the middle of nowhere. As he waited for help, he felt it, that creeping sensation that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. He glanced around, peering into the darkness, but saw nothing. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of the cornfield in the wind. He tried to shake off the feeling, telling himself it was just his imagination, but the unease only grew stronger, that prickling sensation of being watched. It was as if unseen eyes were boring into him, observing his every move. He couldn't shake the feeling, no matter how hard he tried. The darkness seemed to close in around him, suffocating and oppressive. He felt a chill run down his spine, and his breath quickened. He knew he wasn't alone. He turned, and there it was. A figure, barely visible in the dim light, standing at the edge of the cornfield. It was tall and thin, with an unnatural stillness that sent a wave of terror through him. He couldn't make out its features, but he could feel its gaze locked onto him. His heart pounded in his chest as he tried to comprehend what he was seeing. The smiling thing, standing at the edge of the field, bathed in the eerie glow of his headlights. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its grin was wide and unsettling. It was a smile that spoke of malice and malevolence, a smile that promised pain and suffering. John felt a wave of nausea wash over him as he stared at the creature, unable to look away. It didn't move, just stood there, its grin wide and unsettling. John Miller ran. He didn't think. He just acted, driven by pure instinct and terror. He sprinted into the cornfield, the tall stalks whipping against his face and arms as he pushed through. He could hear his own ragged breathing, the pounding of his heart, and the rustling of the corn around him. He didn't dare look back, afraid of what he might see. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs screamed for mercy. The image of that smile burned into his mind. Every shadow seemed to hide the creature, every rustle of the corn a sign of its approach. He stumbled and fell, his body aching and exhausted. But he forced himself to get up and keep running. The fear drove him, pushed him beyond his limits. He didn't know how long he ran, but it felt like an eternity. Finally he burst out of the cornfield and onto a road. He collapsed, gasping for breath, his body trembling with exhaustion and fear. He looked back at the cornfield, but the creature was gone. He was safe for now, but the memory of that night would haunt him forever. John Miller was never the same. Once a lively and cheerful man, he had become a shadow of his former self. The transformation was so stark that even his closest friends barely recognized him. They whispered among themselves, wondering what could have caused such a drastic change. He became a recluse, haunted by the memory of that night, the night when everything changed. He would sit for hours, staring blankly at the walls, lost in a world of his own. His once vibrant eyes now held a distant, haunted look, as if he had seen something that no one else could comprehend. He spoke of the smiling thing with a fear that chilled anyone who listened. His voice would tremble, and his hands would shake as he recounted the events of that fateful night. He described it as a creature not of this world, with a smile that sent shivers down his spine. It was a smile that was devoid of any warmth, a smile that promised nothing but despair. He claimed it wasn't human, that its eyes held an ancient, unknowable evil. Those eyes, he said, were the worst part. They seemed to pierce through his very soul, revealing all his deepest fears and insecurities. It was as if the creature could see into the darkest corners of his mind, and it revelled in the terror it found there. He was dismissed as a madman, driven insane by fear. People would avoid him, crossing the street to avoid any interaction. They would whisper behind his back, calling him crazy, a lunatic, but John didn't care. He knew what he had seen, and no amount of ridicule could change that. But those who lived near the cornfields knew better. They had heard the stories, the whispers of something lurking in the shadows. They had seen the strange lights and heard the eerie noises that filled the night air. They knew that there was something out there, something that defied explanation. They had seen the fear in his eyes, the fear that mirrored their own. It was a fear that spoke of a shared experience, a common terror that bound them together. They knew that John was not crazy, that he had seen something real, something that they too had glimpsed in the darkness. And so they lived in constant fear, always looking over their shoulders, always waiting for the smiling thing to return. The truth of the smiling thing remains a mystery. Is it a malevolent entity, a creature of nightmare-given form, or is it something else? Something born of the land itself, a manifestation of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface of our world. No one knows for sure, but the stories persist, passed down through generations, a chilling reminder that some things are best left undisturbed. The smiling thing is more than just a scary story. It's a warning, a reminder that the world is full of darkness and that some things are beyond our understanding. So the next time you find yourself near a cornfield, remember the stories, remember the fear, and whatever you do, don't look for the smile in the dark, because if it sees you looking, it might just decide to come closer.